open now at 888-99-KEVIN. 888-995-3846.
Merry Christmas. Happy Kwanzaa. I don't think Kwanzaa's real. Happy Hanukkah. Whatever you're celebrating, or if you're not celebrating, happy week. Happy winter week. It's a winter wonderland here in Chicago where I happen to be. Snowing outside and absolutely looking gorgeous. My guest is Jon Rappoport, whose website is insolutions.info and nomorefakenews.com. If you go to our website, ktradionetwork.com, all his information will be there. Plus, he has a book that is out called The Ownership of All Life, Notes on Scandals, Conspiracies, and Cover-Ups. I am grabbing this book, and I'm reading it on my way home to Boston, where my lovely wife, my mom and dad, my brother, and my nephews are all there, waiting for my arrival for the holidays. So I will be headed that way. Jon, on your websites, you don't only expose the news about health, correct? You talk about other things as well?
Yes, for example, the global warming fraud science that is now being exposed all over the world. I've been researching medical issues and science issues, looking for the fraud, basically, because once I found it in the medical arena, I realized that it was everywhere. And the same pattern shows up. The experts control the top journals where the papers are published. They make sure that the people who disagree with them can't get published, can't get money for grants. So you find a few brave researchers who try to buck the trend, and they suddenly discover that they can't get any more money. And then the science becomes political. It just becomes an issue of who controls the journals, who controls the media, and that's what we get handed down to us as science. And so all of a sudden we're told that the planet is going to end in 10 years unless we destroy every economy in the world and start, putting up billions of windmills everywhere.
Now let's talk about global warming, because there's a question that comes up a lot, and somebody says, okay, stopping pollution or reducing pollution has to be a good idea. I mean, we hear about polluted rivers and lakes and streams. We hear about polluted Boston Harbor, San Francisco Harbor. We hear about polluted air. So we know there's pollution out there. So doing something to reduce pollution, that has to be a good thing, right?
Absolutely. And I make this point in several articles that I've written about this. That's one side of the coin. Yes, there is unchecked pollution in some areas of the world, and the people responsible have to be brought to justice, and the pollution has to be taken away, and it's danger to health everywhere that it's found. But this is far different from saying that science has proved that as a result of industrial civilization as a whole, the planet is going to end, in the next 10, 20, 30 years, and that the only way out of this is to basically reduce by over half, maybe even more, all industry everywhere that puts CO2 into the atmosphere. That's a whole different issue, and that's where it gets completely crazy, and that's where the science falls apart, as we're seeing now.
Now, somebody would also ask, what is the rational reason why, quote, the elite, controlling elite class, wants to destroy economies and reduce the standard of living in wealthy countries like the United States?
Well, that really does get into the question of who runs the world. And I think once you look at the agenda of globalism, which really is de facto world government, that is, all nations lose their sovereignty and freedom, independence, and everything is now arranged under a gigantic bureaucracy that controls the whole planet, sort of a much larger model of what they have now in Europe with the European Union. This is the goal. The big sticking point in achieving this goal for them is the United States. Because the United States is really the last country on earth where there is any vestige of personal freedom and independence, the idea being that, you know, the individual is free to live his or her life and to be an entrepreneur and to create something new, something vital, something real. Well, personal freedom and this globalist notion don't go together at all. And so what this elite wants to do is take down the United States first and foremost and bring it down to the level of many other countries around the world in terms of its weakness, dependence, and so on. And this strategy that stems from global warming is one of their major plans, because they aim to put the United States into the deepest kind of economic trouble possible by cutting off American industry at the knees, by requiring it to pay gigantic taxes for emitting CO2, and to just shrink the economy of the United States down to the level of other countries. So that's part of why they're using this science in the way that they are, this fake science, really.
Is there anything that happened in Copenhagen that is not being reported in the mainstream media that you know about, that you're reporting on your websites?
Well, the only thing I would say is it was a failure, complete failure, in the sense that they tried to get all these nations huddled into a room to agree on some drastic cuts in CO2 emissions. That didn't work. And largely, I think their problem was all the exposure of these emails that everybody's been reading about out of the Climate Research Unit at East Anglia University in England that show how these, quote, experts conspired to control the fake science. But behind the scenes, from what I've been told in Copenhagen, there were some individual meetings. And the point was, let's try to make a deal here. Let's see if we can start to put together our own coalition, aside from what's happening at Copenhagen, to reduce CO2 emissions. And there was some degree of promise and success there for those people. Rather dangerous that there would be these side meetings. But still, they've got a battle on their hands now because a lot more people are aware of what's going on. We're
talking with Jon Rappoport, whose website's insolutions.info and nomorefakenews.com. Also the book, The Ownership of All Life, Notes on Scandals, Conspiracies, and Cover-Ups. When we come back, more with Jon Rappoport, more about conspiracies, cover-ups, and scandals, and the information you're not hearing in the mainstream media. Kevin Trudeau here. Thanks for listening. Stay with me. We'll be right back.